Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the winter season and the wisdom of rest, renewal, and the art of dreaming. As we move into winter, we move into a period where a 3-month period of rest, of reflection, of darkness, and for us to nurture and nourish our dreams as we rest. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the Chinese medicine perspective on winter and its wisdoms, on how to care for certain body parts and organs, how to know how they're speaking to us during this season, and also how to care for our spiritual and emotional body during winter. So the seasons are moving through polarities. Life itself is this big circle moving through this axis of polarities. And in Chinese medicine, this is yin and yang. I think we have similar concepts in the Western world of light and dark, up and down. Everything can be kind of structured into these polarities. And the theory of yin and yang is that they are interdependent, so they are one another, and they're constantly becoming one another. If we want to find pure yang, it's in the yin. If we want to find pure yin, it's in the yang. And over the course of the year, the seasons are represented by peaks of these energies, and then transitional periods where they're becoming one another. So yin peaks during the winter, and then morphs into the yang energy during spring, where we nurture the yin energy we've collected and created, but we also prepare to adapt to the incoming yang energy. And then in the summer, we meet the peak of yang energy. And then in the fall, we prepare and transition into the yin to then meet the winter and the peak of yin all over again. So it's important to understand this language of duality and opposites. Yin is passive and receptive and cooling. Yang is active, expressive, and heating. So when we talk about yin, we talk about darkness, stillness, rest, reflection, contraction, the feminine. Again, not so much having to do with gender, although gender does represent these polarities as well, but more this idea of receptivity and of softness and stillness, moisture, the cold, energy moving inward and downward, conservation of energy, so containing it behind barriers or protecting it, and then also the depth of energy itself. With yang, we're talking about light, sunlight, and light, and heat, movement, action, expansion, creation itself. Masculine, again, not about gender, but about the expression of the masculine. Dryness, heat, outward, up and outward energy versus that down and in of the yin. And expenditure, so how are we sharing and creating and giving energy versus conserving it? And this is the surface, what's on top, what are we meeting immediately versus what lies beneath or below. And so this language of polarity and duality speaks to all of life itself. So we can apply this to the seasons, and that's what we'll be doing in this video, talking about winter specifically. But this is also how we talk about food, how we talk about the body, how we talk about gender, how we talk about pretty much anything and everything, herbs. All of it is this yin or yang dominance and expression. And so understanding this language as it applies to the season we're in can help us nourish and nurture ourselves and our body and our emotions during winter season. And during winter, we'll be in that peak of yin energy. So when we discuss the energetics of winter, we're talking about the peak of yin energy, the really essence of yin. It's characterized by stillness, by rest, and introspection. So indigenous wisdom tells us that when we cross that winter solstice, we cross those very dark, long nights of the year, Afterwards, we move into a period of dreaming and of stillness. So it's a time to conserve our energy and focus on protecting what we have so that we can renew ourselves in the spring. So we can start that cycle of life all over again. Nature slows down, the planet literally slows down, moves into this cold stillness. Animals are hibernating, plants become dormant, they move their energy into their roots. You see animals out and about, but they're just eating what's around. They may have stored nuts for the winter that they're surviving on, or they may have bulked up on food that they're surviving on. If the planet is slowing down, if nature needs to rest, we should do the same as well. We should follow suit with the environment around us as well. And so this period is about reflecting this resting even more. Eating warm foods is a huge, huge theme that we'll talk about. Kind of intuitive, right? It's cold. We want our body to be warm. And we want to focus on energy moving inward and downward. So again, we think about rest and reflection and restoration. The dominant element and its wisdom that we'll be working with during this season is water and the water element. Winter has to do with the dominance of water. For a lot of places, it's the wet season versus the dry season, if they don't have as much of a variation in temperature. So water teaches us about adaptability, about its wisdom, and about depth. Water is fluid, it's very adaptable. It moves to whatever shape container it's in. It's very porous. It's the universal solvent, and it's deep, and it embodies both stillness and power. So water is so adaptable that it's found in all different kinds of states. We see it from this very quick moving and kind of ethereal mist to frozen, almost concrete slabs of ice on a frozen lake. I think one of the most powerful things in the world is moving water. It can shape the entire world around it. So we're calling on that wisdom during winter, reflecting and understanding on a deeper level how water also, how this archetype also shows up in us, in our bodies. Water governs hydration, so literally water. We are mostly water. We are water bodies. So it's governing the flow of fluids in the body. And this is not just the water, but bodily fluids that the body creates, the blood. It's the flow of the liquid in the body. We also think about the emotions as the liquid or flowing energy. Emotions are coming and they're going. They have wisdom in their coming and going, but we're allowing for them to pass through us. And that's how we extract their wisdom, right? That's how we're gifted their wisdom. So water also is associated with the emotional body and the flow of the emotions and resilience of the emotional body. And the water element also governs the storage of vital energy. So in Chinese medicine, they'll talk about Jing energy. This influences our bones, our ears, and our reproductive health. It's just overall ability to sustain energy over time, which is a huge theme during winter. How do I get through this difficult time? How do I push through this dark, still sort of death portal, and make sure that my life force can renew itself and begin again when the light returns? So how do I nourish that energy through these dark moments, through these cold moments, to make sure that I can renew myself? There are a couple of organs we want to talk about nurturing, caring for, and listening to during this season specifically. The kidneys are the source of life essence, of that Jing essence in Chinese medicine, and it's finite. It is a finite resource that needs to be preserved, needs to be conserved during the winter, especially. The kidneys are the root of vitality and longevity. Again, so we're talking about vital life force energy lasting over time. Kidneys help to balance the flow of fluids and water in the body. They help to filter the blood. They also govern the bones and the ears. Our ears have fluid in them, and that's how we maintain our balance. As well as our reproductive health. Again, we think about the flow of fluids during reproductive activities, but also in order to keep the reproductive system itself healthy, especially for women, there is a monthly flow of fluids that needs to feel balanced and painless and healthy. So we're symbolizing the depth of our physical foundations. Huge theme for winter and just in general is keeping warm. The body is we are very warm bodies. We have an internal fire known as the metabolism. It needs to be fed and nurtured. We don't want stagnancy. We don't want cold manifesting in the body because it can cause illness or disorder. And so this is especially important during winter because it's so cold outside. It becomes more of an effort to keep ourselves warm as opposed to maybe spring or summer especially. So we always want to focus on keeping the body warm, but during the winter, we're really having to put a conscious effort into it, especially the kidneys. We want to keep them warm, so keep the lower back warm. And we want to eat foods that nourish the kidneys. So we think of black, dark foods that are very mineral rich, like black beans and seaweed and mineral rich broths. We'll talk a little bit more about foods later on, but in general, I want to look at those yin, nourishing, dark, mineral, vitamin-rich foods that can help to nourish our overall life energy and vitality. And the bladder also works in harmony with the kidneys to help filter the blood and keep the flow of fluids and liquids and water moving, balanced and stabilized in the body. Help to regulate water metabolism and elimination, ensure the smooth flow of fluids through the body, and they can symbolize balance and adaptability. So with the bladder, we want to stay hydrated, and we again want to focus on warm liquids. And we really want to avoid overly cold foods and drinks that disrupt this flow of energy because we have this internal fire, soul fire, metabolic fire that we don't want to dampen with ice cold drinks or just cooling or raw foods excessively. It doesn't mean I'm not telling you not to eat raw foods or have a cold drink, but it's just something that we have to be a little more consciously aware of. So, if you're someone who really loves iced coffees, maybe that means adapting to a warmer coffee in the mornings in the winter to not dampen that metabolic fire right at the beginning of the day. Now, the dominant emotion of winter is fear, right? We're entering this dream state with the earth. And oftentimes when we dream, we do meet our fears. We meet our subconscious, which can be motivated by our fears we're not acknowledging that then show up in our everyday and patterns and behaviors. So as we're doing this rest and reflection for the next couple of months, we want to consciously meet our fear. I think this is also symbolized in the darkness that we're meeting in winter. We're meeting the literal darkness. We're entering the stage of death. Fear can absolutely arise in the darkness. I don't think anyone is above that. It's the unknown. It's the fear of what lies ahead. And so fear isn't something we want to run from, and it's not something we want to let control us. We want to learn to be in healthy relationship to our fear. So in its balanced state, fear serves as a protective and cautionary emotion. It's so important for us to feel fear, actually. We've evolved over tens of thousands of years to feel fear, to feel it in certain parts of our body, to process it, because it helps us evaluate risks and make wise decisions. I saw, it was like a TikTok or a meme or something, and it was talking about, it was like a video of being out in the woods at night, and there's not a lot of light and there's shadows and it's just kind of sketchy, and it had some text over it that was like, oh, when you go out into the woods and you really realize what that stress response, that spike of cortisol that you might have in traffic in your morning commute, you realize it when you're in the woods, what it's really for and why we've evolved to feel that fear. Your senses heighten. You become actually more present and more conscious with what's going on in your actions, if you allow yourself to meet that fear. And so a balanced and healthy relationship with fear actually leads us to clarity. It leads us to understanding, okay, why am I feeling this? Oh, something smells off, or something tastes off, or something feels off, something isn't working, something isn't right. How can I move forward through this? How can I get rid of this? It leads to some clarity and purpose of action to understand our fears, as opposed to being consumed by our fears, falling victim to our fear and allowing it to control us, or sort of washing it away and hiding under false bravado and saying, I'm fearless. And that's sort of the same thing, right? Because subconsciously, because you're not meeting that fear and trying to understand it and asking it what it can teach you and what its wisdom is, you're still very much falling victim to it, maybe just subconsciously. So when our fear becomes excessive or unchecked, it can manifest in the body still. It's still with us. We're still holding on to that fear because we're not processing it and we're not allowing the body to help us process it. So it shows up as anxiety, insecurity. I think huge thing for all of us to reflect on how our insecurities are motivating our actions, subconsciously or consciously, or also this feeling of being frozen or stuck, right? That's also a type of fear response. It's like fight or flight, but there's also freeze response, which can show up in so many ways. It can be quite a literal freeze moment, or it can be prolonged over periods of time, which I think some people feel during dark winter seasons. It's just like, oh, I feel so stagnant. I can't do anything, like stagnant water. And we don't want stagnancy in the body or in the emotions, especially when it comes to working with the element of water, but really in general, stagnancy is not what we're looking for. Stillness is different. Stillness allows things to still grow and transform sort of under the surface. So it may look or appear stagnant, but real stagnant water, stagnant behavior accumulates toxins. It stinks. It sucks. It's poisonous for us. And so we don't want to become stuck in our fear. And prolonged imbalances with fear can affect the kidneys and the bladder, leading to fatigue, lower back pain, reproductive health issues, again, depression, right? Just sort of, I'm feeling stuck. So how can we transform fear into the wisdom that we need to get through the winter season? First is really, all of these are pretty simple and I think pretty straightforward. There's no real trick. There's no shortcut. It's meeting this emotion and asking it, what are you trying to teach me? What is it that you're giving me, that you're gifting me? But there are lots of ways that we can meet this emotion. And so first off, in line with the push from winter into this period of stillness and reflection and really deep thinking, really great to do some self-reflection and journaling. So maybe you have a journal that, you don't want to commit to it year long. Maybe it's like, okay, the next 3 months, I'm going to commit to really journaling. And it doesn't need to be this strict journal prompt thing. It can be free flow writing. Like if you feel it, if you think it, you just write it down. It's also journaling is also something really great to do with friends or do in a group. You don't have to do this in solitude. It doesn't have to be some really strict practice. You could have a journaling sesh with your friends and maybe share some of what you journaled about and get some of their wisdom and some of their take, some of their reflections on your own self-reflection and deepen that wisdom. I just think journaling can be really great for sort of the subconscious stream flow of energy to release itself and kind of come to the surface during the winter for us to think more about. Also in line with the wisdom and sort of themes of winter is also meditative practices. Uh, Again, stillness is so important. Um, Meditation can be hard for some people because I think that the way that we're marketed to learn about meditation or interact with meditative practices is again very disciplined. Um, Embrace water wisdom in this. Allow your meditative practice to flow. Meditation isn't about clearing your mind so that there's nothing there. It can be if that's what you need, but it's really about welcoming yourself into the present moment and being very present, very still, so that you can receive the information that's already around you rather than trying to do some sort of action to put information out into the world. You're becoming extremely present with what's already available, whether it's already in your mind or it's around you in your environment. And so there's lots of ways to engage in meditative practices besides just sitting cross-legged and closing your eyes. You can take a meditative walk and just see what comes up and what you're thinking about and what you're feeling. Maybe a meditative walk specifically thinking about fear. Um, yeah, maybe it's washing dishes. Maybe it's dancing. Maybe it's singing. There's lots of ways to welcome yourself into that still presence that allows you to receive wisdom from around you. We also want to focus on herbs and nutrition that can help our kidneys and support our kidneys and our bladder, our blood, the fluids in our body, the water in our body. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming slides. But in general, we want to make sure that we're eating and sleeping and resting to also support any kind of fears that are coming up so that we have the energy to meet them and understand them. And we want to actually connect with water, right? We want to connect with water wisdom. So spending time around water can already put our brain into a meditative state. So maybe it's sitting by the river near you. Maybe it's going to the ocean. Maybe it's taking a bath or a shower. But just finding a way to consciously spend time with water and understand its wisdom, especially when it comes to movement and moving through difficult things, difficult uh, challenges like fear. And then also a great time to focus on or engage with some rituals for courage. And maybe that looks differently for everyone. I would assume it does based on what kind of fear you're meeting and interacting with. And so get playful and experimental. And yeah, that joy really fuses or fuels my courage. So um, maybe it's about for you spending time in the dark. Maybe, again, for all of us, I think the dark is scary. So maybe it's about spending some time, safely, but spending some time in darkness, whether it's inside your house or going outside and preparing yourself to meet that coldness and that darkness and the unknown. Maybe it's doing something solo, doing something for yourself solo. Um, Yeah, for me, it's usually like doing something new by myself uh, and having fun with it. Um, I feel like joy and fun are really great antidotes for fear, as well as trying something new, because you'll find like Oh, actually, I'm way more capable than I thought I was. I was so afraid of that thing, but I just did it, or I did something connected to it, and now I'm realizing I had a lot of more courage than I thought. And so creating some rituals for courage in a time that's maybe bringing up fear for us is a great way to access some wisdom that then we can apply for the rest of the year for all the seasons. I want to go over some herbs for winter. These are some of my favorites to work with. Some more mild herbs, so you can work with them daily. Um, First one I want to talk about is the goji berry. Goji berries are so incredible. They're berries, so um, they're very mild herbs and foods. You know, they can be thrown in to pretty much any dish and they work. You can throw it into lemon water in the morning, oatmeal. You can put it with chicken and meat dishes, pork dish. You can put it into your bone broth. There's just so many ways to use goji berries. They are yin nourishing and they also help support vision and overall life vitality. So really great plant or berry or herb to work with over time, over your lifetime to help nourish vitality, especially great during the winter. I have recipes for all of these herbs online on www.aquamooncosmos.com. So you can check out some recipes to work with goji berries and all these other herbs and foods I'll mention. But in general, I mean, again, have fun. Like they can be kind of thrown into any dish and they work. Um, Black sesame seeds, also incredible for overall life vitality. So mineral rich, so vitamin rich. They help promote kidney and liver health. They can also help support the hair and the skin. They're very yin nourishing foods. And again, can be kind of tossed in anywhere, sweet or savory dishes. Astragalus root is really, really incredible. Research has shown us that astragalus root can help to prevent cancer. It's just in general great for strengthening protective energy in the body, so boosting the immune system. Again, this is the time of cold and flu, and times when the cold manifesting in the body can create disorder and even lead us to um, having a cold or a flu or congestion or sickness. And so astragalus root is really great to throw into dishes to help support the body's protective energy. Um, we have this internal fire, the metabolic fire, soul fire of the body that needs to stay warm, even in the coldest, darkest night. We need to make sure that our circulation, our blood is flowing well, and our body is warm. We have hot bodies. So ginger is just so incredible. Again, can throw it in anywhere. You can have it in a tea, you can put it in a soup, you can put it in a dish, you can grate it, you can use it powdered and minced, and such an incredible herb to really try to work with more consciously and consistently during winter to really see your fire nourished so that the cold doesn't creep in. And then lastly, I want to talk about Schizandra. She's the last but definitely not least. Also, really incredible herb. These are berries. They're called 5-flavor berries because they have all 5 flavors. So sweet, sour, pungent, bitter, and salty. It's hard to describe the flavor if you've never had it. It is very unique. But it's such an incredible berry to have. It helps balance the water element, supports emotional adaptability, supports the flow of liquids and fluids in the body. Also, really great for hormonal balance as well. I hope every woman gets to learn more and work with Schizandra berries because they're really incredible. So just about playing around with that taste and finding out where it works for you. I love to just throw Schizandra berries into tea in the morning. Um, Really easy to work with them. And then foods for winter, we want to nourish the kidneys. We want to support yin energy. So we're thinking warming, salty, and black colored foods. Again, these like dark, mineral rich colors. Salty because that's how our body speaks to us about water or fluid imbalances is through craving for salt. So when we're craving salty foods, we might have an excess of fear in our body, or we might have an imbalance with the kidneys and the bladder. That's who's speaking through that craving. So we want to make sure that we're indulging the body, we're listening to the body when it comes to eating salty foods, but we're also aware that maybe there's a issue with hydration. Um, we also want to look at black foods, again, dark nutrient rich foods. So think black beans, black sesame seeds, black rice, seaweed, nori, kelp, anything that's just, black is all of the colors at once, right? So all of those nutrients at once is kind of how I think about black colored foods. They're really, really rich in nutrients and minerals. Not just black colored foods, but we also think about mineral rich foods as bone broths. Great time to have bone broths. I make it once a week. And if you're not working with animals, then you can have seaweed broths as well. I have recipes for both vegan and bone broths on my website, so you can check those out. Want to focus on root vegetables, very stabilizing. Again, lots of nutrients to help support us and stabilize us through the winter. So beets, carrots, potatoes. Again, warming foods, ginger, garlic, cinnamon, nutmeg, leeks. And this is very intuitive, right? It's cold outside. We want something that's going to keep our body warm, going to stoke the fires of our body, get our blood moving so that we're not feeling like cold water ourselves. And it's funny because a lot of these herbs and warming spices are already incorporated to the foods in the cuisine of winter. Cinnamon, everything has cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg in it around Christmas time. So we want to make sure that we're also incorporating working with these herbs past Christmas, like winter goes until end of March. So make sure we're eating warming foods for the body, and then proteins. So it's supposed to say kidney supportive meats. Pork is yin nourishing, the most yin nourishing meat. And then lentils and tofu, again, very moisture rich proteins. So that's all. I hope that that was helpful, and that you can embrace this period of darkness and stillness and yin energy, meet the fear during this winter, and emerge from the spring feeling all the better and more courageous and nourished for it. Again, if you'd like more information on herbs and foods for winter, activities to support your body, to support your emotional body, as well as recipes for winter, then you can check out my website at www.aquamooncosmos.com.